Well, haven't we heard some classic doomsday rhetoric in the past 48 hours? Now, I'm referring to the climate emergency, as so many leaders of the world now like to categorise it as. It began on Earth Day with angry Greta blasting the virtual World Summit even before they opened Zoom.
The climate crisis doesn't exist in the public debate today. And since it doesn't really exist, and the general level of awareness is so absurdly low, you will still get away with continuing to contribute to the destruction of present and future living conditions.
More exaggeration to guilt the world into transitioning to renewables overnight. That's her plan. Wrong, Greta. Your impractical dreams and your yelling have made climate change top of mind. You've helped create the monster which will plunge the world into darkness and poverty if you had your way. This cannot be done overnight. But even Greta was outdone by President Joe, who had the whole world connected.
This is a moral imperative, an economic imperative, a moment of peril, but also a moment of extraordinary possibilities. Time is short, but I believe we can do this. And I believe that we will do this.
A moment of peril. I'll get to that in a second. If you're wondering at all about how much changing the temperature of the planet will cost, because that's still very important, listen to what the special presidential envoy said.
No politician in the future is going to do this because all over the world, trillions of dollars, trillions of yen, trillions of euros are going to be heading into this new marketplace.
And that's great. Trillions. Trillions there, trillions here, trillions over there. That's a hell of a lot of trillions to rein in a 1.5 degree increase in temperature over more than a century. Now, my view is we're warming slightly, which is far less catastrophic than cooling slightly. And research, development and technology will have the greatest impact on man-made CO2 emissions. Already on Mars, they've worked out how to turn carbon dioxide into oxygen. Now, the environmentalist and economist Bjorn Lomborg wrote in the Telegraph UK this week, "Rabid hyperbole scares us witless, and in our panic, we make expensive but poor policy choices." Now, Lomborg does not agree that climate change is a catastrophe or we're at a point of peril. And funnily enough, a report published this week by the Global Warming Policy Foundation crashes Joe's party. Physicist Dr. Ralph Alexander reviewed extreme weather trends in 2020, and he found a reduction in climate-related disasters. Even Barack Obama's chief scientist, Stephen Koonin, has written a new book about how climate activists have become so far out of touch with the science, the true facts, as to be absurdly and demonstrably false. He is Barack Obama's chief scientist. In the book titled Unsettled, What Climate Science Tells Us, What It Doesn't and Why It Matters, Koonin says, technology and markets need to work at their own pace. As a species, we're good at adapting. This is the voice of calm. And he too is extremely concerned that nations will go broke pouring billions into achieving very little. And all these comparisons being drawn between what the Australian government plans to do about emissions and what the US and the UK are promising are plain dumb. They're not in context. The US is one of the top 3 emitters in the world. We emit 1.5% of the world's total CO2. The US controls the atmospheric levers, not us, with China and India. And as for the UK, 50% of their energy comes from gas and nuclear. There is no comparison, unless, of course, we adopt both very quickly, as we should. And just a footnote, when Scott Morrison began his address last night, they couldn't control the audio. His lips were moving, but no one could hear a word.
Is there any way to tell them?
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm not sure we're hearing you here.
So if you can't control simple audio, how can you control something as complex as the temperature of the planet?